Hi, I'm Carol,
Hi, I'm Lisa.
and we're the
We're the
Grief
Grief
Gurus.
Gurus.
And in today's video, we are going to be talking about keeping calm and carrying on. How very English, and I'm very familiar with it, I have to say. So I'm going to tell you, really, it's quite a sad story. When I was 9, my sister Susie died in an accident. And of course, I'm English. I lived in England, and my parents told us, and then that was it. We didn't have a funeral, a memorial. We didn't know where she was buried, whether she was cremated, any of that. Now, I was 9. However, it meant that that was what was modeled for me in grief, that we keep calm, we carry on as if nothing's happened. And of course, my poor mum, I mean, she couldn't say my sister's name. I don't think I heard her speak it. And she lived till she was 93, maybe once or twice in all those years. And they didn't know any better. There is, of course, no judgment. They did what they thought was right. And, you keep calm, you carry on, you go back to work, you do what's what. But keeping calm and carrying on has so many problems with it, doesn't it, Lisa? It means that we're pushing down our emotions. It means that this is how we think we're supposed to grieve. And I have to say, when Brian died, my husband, I went back to work 3 days after his funeral because what was I doing? Keeping calm and carrying on.
I'm really sorry about your sister
Mm,
passing.
me too.
And yeah, for me, our culture is a little bit more open in terms of the States. And my mom is someone who's always been open with feelings and emotions, very empathetic, very nurturing, and was actually a psychotherapist. And so I feel like I had permission to have my feelings. And yet I didn't, though. I didn't. I was very much a people pleaser, probably still have a little bit of that hanging around, as a lot of us do, particularly
Mhm.
women. And I was the second child in my order, my pecking order in my family. So I really felt like I learned early on that if I just kept calm and carried on, got my good grades, played sports, stayed out of visible trouble, that I could, kind of fly under the radar. So when my daughter died when I was 27 and she was just 13 months old, I I kept calm and I said, "Oh, how can I make, lemonade out of lemons?" And I think I'll become a pediatric ICU nurse to honor her. And I feel like I put a lot of effort into not, being upended. Now, people that were around me knew that I was suffering and that I was vulnerable and that I was really grieving and hurting. But ultimately, as a 56-year-old woman now, years later, I realized that I didn't, even though I thought I was processing, I didn't actually process, even though I may have had more permission in my own environment than you may have had.
Mhm.
I didn't. And the reason I know that I didn't do it effectively is because just 4 years ago, I found myself leaving a career that I'd worked really hard for, having to rework and actually leave my marriage of 25 years, which by the grace of God, I've gotten back to in a second time with the same partner, which is a miracle. But I had to step away from these big rocks to process what had happened. And in that, Carol, what happened for me was the anger and the helplessness that I felt around my daughter's suffering. I had never found a channel for that. I had only made things look pretty. I had only tried to empower myself and help others by being a nurse, or the different things that I've done. And those things aren't bad. They do all have a role in our healing journey and learning how to, as you always say, and which I love, is to carry our grief and to integrate it. But this anger piece for me, because I wasn't a person who had a lot of skill at being angry or at setting boundaries or anything, again, just this kind of, I'm just going to fly under the radar. No one's going to notice if I do a little of this or a little of that, because I'm doing the big, the big public things, right? Getting
Yep.
my grades, doing the things. And um, there was a price for me to pay. I'm very grateful that I was able to find my way back to my family, and also professionally, now that this has kind of been this explosion of being able to create and author 2 books on grief and to create the grief gurus along with you and to kind of commit my, as you say, also soul-driven energy toward helping others in this way would not have been possible if I hadn't taken a couple of years there, just 4 or 5 years ago now, to say, wait a minute, WTF, this is not okay with me. I'm mad as hell, and to find ways to express that. So keeping calm and carrying on, as you said,
Didn't
there are
work
a
for you,
lot of
did it?
no, there are a lot
I
of
think
danger and pitfalls with that.
there are, and I think you bring up such a really important word, permission, right? The permission to grieve, the permission to feel our emotions. And interesting that we both left our careers. I had a 36-year career as a physical therapist, and I loved it. But I found that I was burning out. I was seeing less and less clients because I was spending so much energy pushing my own emotions down to be able to walk into a room and say, hello, how are you today? And pretending I was fine and keeping calm and carrying on. Gosh, the energy drain to just keep up that facade for years is enormous. And I remember when I spoke to the doctor and I said, I think I need a few days off or a week off. I'll take a week off. She said, no, you'll take a month off. And I'm like, oh, I've never taken a month off in my life, ever. And when you finally have the space to sit down and be with those emotions, and I can remember the tears and the journaling, I realized I had to leave the profession that I loved and do something else, but I also had to sit with those emotions and finally feel them. And it's so interesting that we're both authors, because for me it came out in poetry, which was a real shock. I've got to tell you, I haven't written poetry, so that was my way of finally expressing what I was really feeling. And so if any of you are thinking, got to keep calm, I'm sure people have come up to you and said, oh, you're so
You're
strong.
doing great.
Yes, you
That's what
look
they say.
good.
Gosh, you're doing great. Really?
Yeah, really? Do you really know how I'm feeling? Well, no, because you aren't even acknowledging it. So how can anybody else acknowledge it? And it used to drive me nuts when people would say, oh, you're so strong. I used to think, well, I'm not really sure what else I would do except put one step in front of the other. But now I know that I could put one step in front of the other and have permission to grieve at the same time. Comes back to that oscillating between loss and restoration that we've talked about on another video. So if any of you are feeling the pressure from society, and let's face it, there is, to keep calm and carry on, to after your 2 to 5 days bereavement leave, go back to work and be normal, how can you possibly be? And you have to put them down. You have to take time away when you come home from work. You have to find that quiet time to feel the grief, to feel what you should feel if somebody you love has died. So we want to give you permission to do that. Yes, we need to carry on, but we don't have to totally need to feel calm. We can feel angry, we can feel sad, we can feel regretful, all of those emotional feelings that come up in grief. We need to learn how to feel them. That's my 2 cents worth on that.
Yeah, for sure. Because even, when I think back of the 2 decades where I was just holding that all in and holding in the feeling of the way that it comes up for me is it's like realizing I never got to say no, and so carrying that when we're in that space, when I was doing that through those years, I felt very much like I'm good. It's fine. Why wallow in something I can't control? Why sit around and lick my wounds? There's no purpose to it. But I'm on a little bit of the other side of the mountain of pain that I finally found the courage to start to navigate, and I'm still navigating. But when I'm now on the other side of it, what I can see is that during those years when I was telling myself I was okay and that there was no point in, indulging myself in those feelings and things like that, what happens is our worlds get very small. They get smaller and smaller, and we have less tolerance, and we're not able to access any parts of ourselves. And I don't wish for anyone to have to walk away from a career that they worked hard to build, or walk away from their life partner because they haven't been able to find a way to take care of what you need or what they need. So yeah, there's a cost to it. We want to be able to feel the full surround of our lives. The pain feels like it's going to be too much, but taken in small doses, we will give ourselves a better chance of having a fulfilling and joyful life with the pain riding alongside of us, but not trying to turn everything off and never try to feel what we're feeling. So we want to keep calm and carry on some of the time, and some of the time we want to really find a way to express and feel and experience what it is, so that it doesn't wait for us around the corner and then one day, boom, our whole life blows up. And we haven't even touched on things like addiction and substance
Yeah.
abuse and
Yeah.
all the
Maybe
different
another one,
ways.
another video. Yeah.
Those things are so dangerous. So hopefully you found this to be helpful, or maybe something resonated. If so, please share a comment, like, and subscribe to our channel. And if you're so inspired, check out thegriefgurus.com, and we'll see you in the next video.
Bye-bye.